This is Boston Lanka News, so bringing you news, views and entertainment from Boston and USA. I'm Vayoni Timil. Dilan Jayawardena, who graduated in 2006 from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, one of the world's most prestigious universities in science and technology, started his own company in 2007. Dilan raised several millions of dollars in funding to invent the first real-time search engine of the web, Scuba. Dilan joins with us from New York. Dilan, tell us about the Scuba. What made you decide to begin inventing the Scuba, this real-time search engine?
It began when I graduated from MIT in 2006 and moved to San Francisco to work for Oracle. And San Francisco, as you know, is a very startup-oriented city. There are tons of startups, and there's a huge tech community. And I was getting keenly interested in starting my own company, and I started going to these events and kind of exploring different product ideas. And that year in 2007, the US government ran out of H-1B visas, and as a result, I couldn't get a visa that would let me start my own company in the US. So Oracle offered to move me to the London branch, which is what I did in 2007. And when I moved to London, about 2 months later, I quit my job at Oracle and started working on several different ideas that seem appealing. The way the idea for Scuba came about was, at that time, a lot of Twitter was becoming popular, and it was still a really small company. It was a really niche product, but the potential of the product was becoming more and more obvious as news was starting to break on Twitter. There was this occasion, I remember, when water was discovered on Mars. A scientist tweeted that from the lab before anyone else got that news to the press. So that's how the news broke out. And so around this time, I was working with my co-founder, and we saw this as potential because Twitter was already it was being used by people for many things, but news also was breaking on Twitter, and we were wondering, what if we can figure out a way to find those tweets that are newsworthy and highlight those, and maybe we can kind of change the way journalism itself is done, because if anyone can discover and report news, that's incredible. So that was the initial idea, and we started building that, and while we were in London, and we applied for this incubator program called Y Combinator. It's like perhaps the most prestigious incubator in the US, or if not the world. And we got into the program with this idea, and we were in Boston for 3 months in 2008 developing this idea in this incubator program. Throughout that evolution, the idea turned into a search engine, because what we were essentially doing was looking for relevant and trending pieces of information in the Twitter stream, and turned out the best way to do that was to search the entire Twitter stream. So we started developing the search engine, and in 2009 we launched the world's first real-time search engine. What that means is that we specialized in indexing and searching Twitter, Dig, Delicious, Flickr, anything that is live on the web, as opposed to, say, at the time when if you searched for Michael Jackson on Google, for example, you would get the Wikipedia article at the top as the top result. Whereas if you search for Michael Jackson on Scuba, you would have gotten like at the time of his death, especially like our site had that information within seconds. Like our goal was to the bring the news from um, the the point it's posted to the web on Twitter or whatever to our website within under 60 seconds, and we were doing that quite well. So yeah, that's the story about how Scuba came about and what it did basically.
My understanding is Google bought this search engine from you.
Yeah, so what happened was, and then we had another product in 2011. We had another launch. It was actually a side product that used real time data to track famous people. It was um, because people would like if you see anyone that's famous, say like someone like Steve Jobs, say you saw him at a cafe, you would probably tweet about it, right? So we were using that data to track the whereabouts of famous people, and it was really a side project that really got really famous and got a lot of traffic, and we had a community of people around that as well. And at that time, Google was building Google Plus. It had not launched yet, but they were looking for experts in that area in social media products, and they approached us and they talked to us, and it seemed like a good fit, and they ended up buying Scuba.
So, if somebody wants to use this search engine, Scoopla, can they do that?
No, it's no more. Unfortunately, a lot of the products that get bought by Google, Google itself was shut down. Um, but yeah, I mean, we all of us worked at Google, and some of the ideas were that contributed to their stack.
Tell us a little bit about your background.
I was born in Sri Lanka. I grew up in Maradana. I went to college. I mean, I went to school at Nalanda from like um, primary to up through A levels, and did my O levels and A levels at Nalanda. Completed my A levels in 2001. Um, and yeah, and at the time, I really didn't expect to for any of this to happen. I was quite set to um, go study engineering at the Morto University. But meanwhile, while I was waiting, I got a scholarship to attend MIT, and so took it. So that kind of was the turning point.
And now, are you working on any other innovation or any new product?
Yeah. So since I was at Google for the last 1.5 years, and I was working on several products and with some amazing teams. But I left Google about 4 months ago, and I have been looking at the next step, what I want to work on next, and I have several interest areas that I've been looking at. One is relevant to what we call quantified self. The idea is that um, there are a lot of devices um, that can be used. Technology has gotten to a point where it's cheap and reliable um, and versatile enough that it can be used to track a lot of day-to-day activity and other things about your life, and it can be used to improve the quality of life of a lot of people. Um, one of the simplest examples is like this little device that I'm wearing. It's made by Nike. It's called a fuel band. It's basically a pedometer. It tracks steps, but then it gives you a breakdown of like your activity throughout the day and the number of calories you burn, etc. But the next generation of these devices are actually going to be able to track like things like how focused you are throughout the day, like using EEG sensors, and apply that to a variety of use cases, even meditation, which is something that I'm kind of passionate about. So that is one of the focus areas that I've been looking at. It's really exciting. It's quite a bit of work to be done, but still working on it.
People nowadays get most of their news from social media. What do you think the future holds for mainstream media such as newspapers, radio, and TV?
That's actually a really good question. But it's really anyone's guess. It's like, I mean, a lot of newspapers are in deep trouble financially because of digital media. But that said, investigative reporting is still, incredibly important. So what we're gonna somehow have to find ways to monetize traditional news sources in this new media world, right? We have already seen some incredible changes, like with the Egyptian um, revolution, like a couple of years ago. People were organizing. Like one of the most powerful moments that I noticed was that this guy, I saw this video on Al Jazeera where this guy was pleading his fellow citizens to organize. He couldn't even speak English, but he was urging them to get on Facebook and self-organize, and that's incredibly powerful. People were using mediums like Facebook and Twitter to report from the ground. So it's in that sense, it's more democratization of information reporting, which is incredible. But on the other hand, you have the traditional media, like even really like um, revered news sources like Washington Post and New York Times. They're struggling to make money at this point. So I thought it was really interesting. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, recently bought Washington Post. Maybe he has some cool ideas as to how to kind of like revive that. But I think it will. I think it will happen. It's going to be a lot of changes in the next decade or so. Um, but I think it will all be for the good.
Let's talk about cybersecurity. We often hear horror stories where people's privacy being invaded or predators using internet to find victims. Then we have people like Edward Snowden taking cybersecurity to another level. Your thoughts?
It's there are like so many very different problems that need to be addressed. For example, like the simple issue of passwords, right? Like every website that you log into requires a password, but so it happens at this point, like you have so many websites that you use and you need to log into. Most people end up using the same password for every website, and which is a huge security risk. And most of the time, those passwords are not very complex either. So these are issues that can be solved with technology. Like the next iPhone, which is supposed to be launched in like 10 or 20 days, is supposed to have a fingerprint scanner in the phone built in, so that you will never have to enter your password in the phone again. And so that's an example of technology itself, like getting rid of some of these weak points in the security chain. Now, at the other end of things, you have Edward Snowden, um, which is a very interesting debate. Controlling information. It's really it's less about, as I see it, it's less about the individual Snowden or what he did. It's more about redefining redefining the like how we interpret who owns this information, who is the guardian, who is it that can be trusted um with with information like that. And that is a really interesting debate. Um I don't know where and how it will end up, but I think it's going to be a very long discussion. Um, Companies like Google and Facebook, are very much committed to keeping the internet open and um, and having some kind of like transparency as to like who is accessing your information. And I think it's a really valid debate. A lot of people are contributing to it, and a lot of people who care about security but also freedom are really passionate about it. Um, and yeah, I mean, we'll see where it goes.
Can you predict where social media would be in 5 years?
That's a really good question. I think there are going to be certain changes that. So the thing with social media is that the first generation and the second generation perhaps of social media that we see today is focused at, it's built to kind of distract you. It's built to create these somewhat surface level connections with many people, and try to maintain those connections, which is why you have 500 or 1,000 friends on Facebook, and you don't really know, I don't know, most of them. I think the next evolution of this is going to be kind of trying to get to the crux of the real connections that you have. People, if that doesn't happen, people will kind of try to naturally move away from social media because it kind of at some point becomes too much of a distraction. But you already see technology driven solutions to that as well. For example, I think one of the biggest innovations in the next 5 years is going to be a personal digital assistant. Um, Pretty much like it would exactly function like Siri or Google now if you use Android. Both these services try to have access to all your data and understand what matters to you and notify you only when something important happens. So you will be kept kind of undisturbed by the constant stream of information that's like flowing in the background. In addition, these services will be able to take care of a lot of things for you, like from setting up your calendar to turning off like lights at your house to like pretty much anything a personal secretary can do is should be doable through Siri, which is really really exciting. And and I also see a trend towards new products that focus on things like mindfulness. I mean, in a Buddhist sense, even, and meditation, and creating deeper connections between people, and improving the quality of life and happiness, etc. These products are still very much in the infancy stage, but a lot of people are interested in working on things like that, and both software and hardware is kind of coming together and getting to a point where it's actually possible to even like help you train your mind to become a better you kind of thing. So that's also really exciting.
You have so much expertise and knowledge about computer science and information technology, as well as starting IT companies. How can you support a Sri Lankan origin new and young innovators or entrepreneurs with your expertise and knowledge?
Yeah, definitely. I am in touch with a number of startups. I act as work with startups as an advisor, and some Sri Lankans as well in that group. I have been looking into trying to start some sort of foundation that can help startups in Sri Lanka with product expertise and um, and visibility. So as I say it, to start a web startup, you really don't need that much of an investment. If you're starting a startup in Sri Lanka, like I don't see investment as the biggest factor that makes it difficult. It's three things. One, lack of product expertise, how to design a product to appeal to a global audience. This is a really, really difficult task because there is a huge cultural gap. So you really need to understand, you really need to have advisors who understand like what you're doing, what might work and what doesn't. And then the second is marketing. Like, how do you launch your product to a global audience, right? Like, if you're building a product in Sri Lanka, how do you get coverage on TechCrunch or Engadget or Hacker News if um, if you are not located in the Silicon Valley itself? And third is connections. Like, how do you tap into a much larger network that exists outside your means? So I've been trying to figure out how to start a foundation to help Sri Lankan startups with that. And if anyone is interested in working on this, please contact me at dilanj@gmail.com. I'd love to talk to you. If you're a wannabe entrepreneur, my advice would be to just do it. Like, there's never been a better time in the history of humanity probably to start a startup than it is today, because the costs are incredibly low. The opportunities are insanely diverse and prevalent, and the market is growing. Like, I'm going to be spending the next 3 months in Brazil, exploring South American markets and new opportunities there. South America is exploding, and Brazil and Chile specifically, and then China obviously is a huge market, and then India is another exploding market. So there are, even for products that already exist, there are so many new markets coming up and being created that that needs to be served differently, or in a way that's more tailored to that market. So the point is, like, there are so many people out there to buy your product and pay for it. So if you're a passionate individual thinking about doing a startup, there's never been a better time. So you should do it.
That concludes our news edition. We meet you again with another news edition of news, views and entertainment from Boston and USA. Till then, goodbye.